All right, let's take a look back at the Caledonian Market in London back in the 1920s. Here's a shot from Kuwait, taken in 1955. It shows a woman carrying a sewing machine. This incredible photo shows a German army dog leaping across a trench in France. He's carrying a message between outposts. The year was 1915. A classic London bar, back in 1893. We've got the pub landlord, probably keeping a watchful eye on things, and his barmaids ready to serve. And there's a lone drinker, enjoying a quiet pint. Looks like a cozy evening. Wow! Check out this amazing photo. It's a giant snowman, and it's from Aberdeen, Scotland, way back in 1963. Here's a photo from the 1930s. It shows two children wearing masks. You're looking at the very first X-ray image ever taken. It was way back in 1895, and the brilliant scientist behind it was Wilhelm Röntgen. Here's a photo of Stefan Bobrowski, also known as Lionel the Lion-Faced Man. Stefan suffered from a condition called hypertrichosis. This made hair grow up to 8 inches long all over his body, including, as you can see, his face. This photo shows a delegation from the Minnesota League of Women Voters. They're gathered around a mile of signatures for their World Court proposal. It looks like they're really excited about getting those signatures. In this series of photos, taken in June of 1962 by George Barris, we see the iconic Marilyn Monroe, a blonde bombshell, beaming. But behind that movie star smile, there was a deep agony. Tragically, she died of an overdose just a few months later, on August 4th, 1962. Here's a photo from way back when, the very first Miss America pageant. It was held in 1921, and you can see these beautiful bathing beauties lined up on the Atlantic City boardwalk. That was in September of 1921, and they were all there hoping to impress the judges. This incredible photo shows a really significant moment, Germany surrendering. It was taken in New York in 1945. A fishing boat in New England, completely covered in ice. This was actually taken way back in 1916, but not in New England. It's from British Columbia. A pair of tornadoes near Dunlap, Indiana. This was during the Palm Sunday outbreak back in 1965. The date was April 11th, 1965. Here's the Imperial Gate of the Imperial City in Peking, dating back to 1901. Here's a photo of a Victorian lass with some rather long hair. This fashionable picture was taken sometime in the 1890s. Here's a photo showing the construction of the Hoover Dam back in 1935. Here's a cool old photo. Check out these New York City firefighters posing with their fire engine. This was back at the turn of the century, in 1912, right in front of their fire station. All right, here's a photo called Donut Dunker from the 1930s. This photo was taken on the 7th of June, 1943. It shows the American film actor Clark Gable, who was serving as a gunnery instructor with the United States Army Air Force, somewhere in England at the time. He's seen here manning a weapon aboard an aircraft. This is Brooklyn Supreme, one of the biggest horses ever. He stood at 66 inches tall and tipped the scales at 3,200 pounds back in the 1930s. This little electric narrow-gauge train was installed in New York's Holland Tunnel back in 1955. Its job? To keep an eye on the traffic speed. Here's a photo of a samurai, decked out in full armor and carrying his sword. This picture was taken around 1860. Alright, so this photo shows the first flight tests of the absolutely enormous Hughes H-4 Hercules. They started in November of 1947. Alright, check this out. This photo is called Pipe for Two. It shows two guys in New York, back in June the 2nd, 1949. They're demonstrating this pipe, and it's a pretty interesting one. They called it the double ender. Here's a line truck from Seattle's transit system, snapped back in June of 1946. It's at the intersection of 3rd and Pike. Here's a photo taken of Native Americans by Roland W. Reed, sometime between 1907 and 1913. Here's the photo. We've got Manchester City player Mike Summerby showing off the cool, built-in record player in his brand new Volvo P1800. This was way back in 1976. On the 21st of June, 1933, we see English banker Montague Colley Norman, who was born in 1871 and passed away in 1950, the governor of the Bank of England. He's surrendering to the Pearly King of Hackney, who's out in front of the Bank of England in London, selling flags for charity. Okay, so this is a photo of Felix Werle. Here's the image of Tower Bridge way back in 1920. This photo shows everyone at the Peerless Oyster Company picking shrimp. It was taken way back in 1911, while the bosses were out at dinner. Apparently, they didn't want the kids in the pictures. This was in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, by the way. Here's a shot of the Golden Gate Bridge during construction. You can really see what a massive engineering feat it was. This photo was taken in San Francisco way back in 1935. Here's a neat shot from the Golden Gate International Exposition. This is the General Motors exhibit, taken on June 11, 1940. Here's a cool shot of Bruce Lee teaching Sharon Tate some combat skills. It looks like it was taken in the late 1960s. He's showing her how to kick. Here's a beautiful shot from New York, way back in 1958. It shows a lovely little girl just soaking in the city. It shows a baker in 1935 delivering bread through floodwater in Langport, Somerset. This photo shows Alexander Graham Bell on the right with his assistants. They're watching a circular tetrahedral kite take flight. It was taken in 1908. Here's a photo of some boys after they'd bought their Easter flowers. This was taken in Union Square, New York back in April of 1908. Here's a picture from 1966 of a blind woman relaxing at her local swimming pool. You can see her guide dog keeping a watchful eye over her. It's a really sweet moment. They used this glamour bonnet that went over a woman's head. Then, a hose was attached. The idea was that it would create low atmospheric pressure, like a vacuum, to supposedly improve their skin complexion. Here's a picture of Italian drivers taking a nap in their carts in Rome back in 1908. Here's a photo showing soldiers from the British 61st Division in Northern Ireland, way back in 1941. They're carefully placing a message written on rice paper into a container. Then, they're attaching it to a carrier pigeon. Imagine how crucial communication was back then. Here's a photo of an Afghan communist revolutionary. This was taken during the Sour Revolution in 1978. Here's Charles Thompson saying hello to his new classmates at public school number 27. This was way back in September of 1954, just a little under 4 months after the Supreme Court said that racial segregation was unconstitutional. The Capitol lawn was mowed by a steam-powered lawnmower all the way back in 1903. This photo shows the San Francisco earthquake. It happened on April 18, 1906. Here's a photo of a really brave individual. This is a disfigured French veteran from the First World War, and the photo was taken in 1920. He's showing off a face mask that was designed to hide his injuries. You can really get a sense of what these soldiers went through. All right, check this out. This is a mirror selfie from a German fraternity, way back in 1912. All right, let's take a look at this photo. We've got some divers taking a plunge into the River Thames. They're right near Westminster Bridge, so that's a pretty iconic spot. Looks like they're having a blast. Here's a picture of King George VI looking absolutely thrilled. You can see him having a blast on a theme park ride. It's a rare moment of royal joy, captured back in the 1930s. Here's a photo of Bill Clinton when he was just 6 years old back in 1952. Here's a photo of David Isom, who was 19 years old. He broke the color line at a segregated pool in Florida on June 8, 1958. And you know what happened? Officials closed the facility after that. Here we have a mischievous shot of Tarzan himself. This one was taken on the 11th of October, 1933. It shows the Hollywood actor Johnny Weissmuller, born in 1904, who sadly passed away in 1984, having a bit of fun. He's larking about with his wife, Lupe Velez, who was born in 1908 and died in 1944 on a diving board. The Willamette meteorite. It's the biggest meteorite ever found in the United States. This photo was taken at the American Museum of Natural History in New York back in 1939, specifically on the first day of May. Here's the Chrysler Building taking shape. You can really see the ambitious architecture that was about to completely change the New York skyline. This was way back in New York, in 1929. All right, here's a picture of a man, and he's got some seriously impressive mustaches. All right, here's a shot of a lady hanging out with her cat in Times Square. This was way back in 1956. This is a powerful image, the American flag planted on top of Mount Suribachi. It was taken shortly after the flag was raised there by 6 U.S. Marines. This is actually based on Joe Rosenthal's iconic photo. The event itself happened during the Battle of Iwo Jima, which took place on February 23, 1945. Here's a look at one of the very earliest prototypes of a head-mounted display, or HMD. This one was developed back in 1968 by Ivan Sutherland and his team. Here's a photo from North Africa, taken in 1944. It shows women in their bathing suits. This photo is believed to be the earliest photograph of New York City. It was taken on Broadway between Franklin and Leonard Streets back in May of 1850. Check this out. Passengers on the Empire State Express back in 1897 got a quick peek at the bustling streets of Syracuse, New York, as they sped across the state. What a glimpse of history. Here's a cool photo from around 1957. You see a man taking a selfie. He's cleverly using a piece of wood to trigger the camera shutter. What a creative way to capture a picture of yourself. Here's a look at the future queen showing real confidence, even back in her younger years. This photo captures her walking in London in May of 1932. Here's a photo from 1927 showing a nurse. She's using ultraviolet light on some babies. Here's a look at some of the floats from the 1939 edition of Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Here's a fun one. This photo is of Marilyn Monroe in a potato sack dress taken in 1951. Here's a photo of a true friend. It was taken in a New York bus terminal right before they left for the worsening situation in the Pacific back in 1941. Here's a photo of Helen, who was an American Indian telephone and switchboard operator in Montana back in 1925. A photo of John Meintz, a German-American farmer. It shows the terrible aftermath of an attack he suffered. This happened on August 19, 1918. Local people dragged him from his home in Luverne, Minnesota, and they whipped him, then covered him in tar and feathers. Here's the first production tank of the German Empire. It was released between 1917 and 1918. This incredible photo captures a pivotal moment in history. It was taken on January 30, 1933, at the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. You can see the crowds cheering, and right in the center window, bathed in a spotlight, is Adolf Hitler. This picture was taken right after he was inaugurated as Chancellor. This photo captures the pure joy of childhood. The kids are clearly having a blast, playing around with the photographer. It was taken back in 1969.
This is a great shot! It's Kenny Baker as R2-D2 on the set of Star Wars. This was taken back in 1977.